In 1987, I traveled to the Acari Valley on the south coast of Peru in order to work on an archaeological investigation. It was an incredible experience for me. Acari is situated in the far northern reaches of the Atacama Desert, and it's just 80 miles south of Nazca, where the famous Nazca lines are located. The archaeology of this part of the world is incredible. One morning, right at sunup, myself and a few of the other archaeologists called a bus out on the Pan American Highway for what should have been an 8-hour journey to Arequipa. We had completed our field project in the Acari Valley and wanted to go exploring before we returned home. Instead of being a day trip, though, it would take us more than 36 hours to reach Arequipa. When the decrepit old bus arrived 2 hours late, we were forced to buy another ticket. The driver was surly, and he claimed that this was a different bus and that we had missed hours. That wasn't true, though. This had to be our bus. It was just running 2 hours late. As we boarded the bus, we had no idea as to the severity of our impending fate. This was the bus from hell. Having no choice, we quietly boarded the bus. I sat down in my seat and realized that it was broken, permanently frozen at a 45-degree angle between the upright and reclined positions. I cringed and looked for a better seat, but there were no other seats to be had. All the seats were taken. I told myself that I could manage the discomfort for 8 hours. Little did I know what was in store for me. From that point on, the bus broke down every 50 miles or so, and we'd be stranded for a few hours here and a few hours there until the driver and his assistant could get the beast up and running again. I took a photo of the bus in the late afternoon at the place just north of where the highway turns away from the desert coast and heads straight up into the massive Andes. I believe this was the third time the bus had broken down that day, and we were stuck here for at least 3 hours. The Pacific Ocean was less than 100 feet away, so this certainly wasn't the worst place to be stranded. Furthermore, this was the center of the Andean condor range, and it was possible to actually see the big birds in the air here. I lay down on the beach and looked skyward through my binoculars for the longest time, watching condors sailing high above and sometimes swooping quite low. Just before sundown, the bus sputtered to life again, but as we climbed into the mountains, our decrepit steed continued to fail us. The first time it died after dark, we were dismayed to learn that our drivers had nothing more than a small birthday-style candle to illuminate the engine they were frantically working on. One of the archaeologists gave them his flashlight, which brought a faint smile to their faces. With better light, they soon got the bus running again, but it was only a temporary fix. Around midnight, the old bus died for good. We were on a high plateau enshrouded in dense fog, with the bus half on and half off the road. All that night, great big mining trucks came roaring out of the darkness like so many demons. The drivers would see the bus at the very last minute and swerve to avoid hitting us. One or two of them came exceptionally close to hitting us. The bus was packed with Peruvians, most of them indigenous Quechua-speaking campesinos. Peru was in the midst of a violent uprising at the time, pitting the Maoist-inspired Sendero Luminoso, or Shining Path, against the Peruvian military. I found myself wondering if there might be any guerrillas sitting disguised among my fellow travelers. As the night wore on and the temperature plummeted below freezing, we were thankful that the bus was packed with so many warm-blooded souls, whether they included the feared Maoist or not. No one slept very well that night, campesinos and archaeologists alike. We had little or no food, were cold, and felt helplessly at risk. The night was about as dark as I've ever seen. With so much fog enveloping the bus, there was absolutely no light to see by. In the middle of the night, we were all startled by a loud banging as one of the female passengers, apparently having completely lost it, rushed down the bus's cluttered aisle, beating some metal object against the ceiling and shouting in an indigenous tongue I didn't recognize. The banging sounded like the noise that might be made by a machete, one of the preferred weapons of the Sendero Luminoso, if it were to be used in such a way. It's begun, I thought to myself, as I quickly lowered my head and hunkered down to make as small a target as possible, assuming that the worst was about to happen. But it didn't happen. The angry passenger rushed toward the front of the bus, then turned and rushed back, shouting and banging against the ceiling all the way. Near the back of the bus again, the woman suddenly disappeared into the dark silence that she had been awakened from. Fortunately, we did not hear from her again. When morning came, we discovered that our drivers had vanished. It turned out that both were sleeping in the compartment bay beneath the bus, but we didn't know that at the time. We felt abandoned, and we were clearly stranded on a very desolate stretch of mountain highway. Few vehicles passed by other than for the occasional mining truck. But as luck would have it, a bus did appear around mid-morning, and we successfully flagged it down. The bus was filled with passengers, but there was still some standing room available, and thus we archaeologists and a few of the Peruvians bought yet another ticket for Arequipa. We finally arrived at our destination just before sundown on the second day of the journey. Upon our arrival, we learned that the authorities had listed us as missing and were actively searching for us along the highway. After resolving our disappearance with the authorities, we went to our rooms and sank heavily into our welcoming beds for a very well-deserved rest. The next day would come soon enough, and with it, the promise of new adventures.